Hello and welcome back to the Puncher's Chance podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Inoue as possibly the pound for pound number one and previewing his fight week next Tuesday. As well as that, we're going to be previewing Diego Pacheco's card over in America. We're going to be having a look back at Floyd Mayweather's event. And then, of course, talking about anything that's going on in the boxing world at the moment. As I said, to kick it off, Floyd Mayweather. And I said Floyd Mayweather's event because obviously he was officially promoting it. And there was a few undercards on there that, to be honest, until Sunday morning, I didn't even know were on the card. I couldn't tell really what the undercard was. There wasn't much on BoxRec until the very last minute. But Kermel Moton got a first round knockout after, I think, 50 something seconds and really kind of stole the show on that one. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, he seems quite a decent talent. As an amateur, he was 61-3, and he's working with Mayweather, so he can't be no mug if he's working with Mayweather. But yeah, talking about that event on Saturday night over in Mexico, I don't think I've ever seen a referee get kicked out of a boxing ring before, and it just adds to the bingo card of 2024 with things we thought we wouldn't see. We've had an undisputed title fight at heavyweight for the first time in God knows how many years, and then we've had a referee get kicked out of the ring. But yeah, that Kermel Morton looks good. But I think the main talking point from that card on Saturday night was just Floyd Mayweather kicking out the referee, who actually is quite a high level referee. If people don't know who he is, he's actually quite high up there. But yeah, I just thought I'd never see the day a boxer kicks out a referee over a decision. That didn't make sense to me. I don't know what you felt about it.
It was weird. It was bizarre. It was a bit awkward. I can't tell whether it was supposed to be whether it was like a scripted moment that was supposed to be kind of funny, like WWE style. Obviously, Floyd's, made appearances on WWE before. Maybe he's taken some inspiration from there. But no, weird. I don't know. I didn't. If it was that kind of thing, I think it was unbelievably awkward and badly done. And if it wasn't sort of purposeful and it was generally just Floyd sacking the ref halfway through the fight, that is just like so strange, unnecessary. The ref's there to tell you what the rules are, not the other way around. And I suppose there's a conflict of interest with Floyd being the promoter as well. But yeah, I don't know. It was a weird event, a weird show. It's a rematch to a weird fight in the first place, and it's probably lowered slightly my appetite for exhibition fights, which was already pretty low.
It's like their last meeting when he apparently hit him on the back of the head. It looked like he was going to start kicking off again, and you're thinking it didn't take him as many rounds to do it. But yeah, like you said, it wasn't a great build up to it. The undercard, you look at BoxRec. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's just all question marks on basically the majority of the fights on there. But yeah, listen, it's great to see Floyd Mayweather again out there in a boxing ring. And I'm not being funny. If he did come over to the UK and do another exhibition, I think we would make the effort to go and watch him because he's, like I keep on saying, he's Floyd Money Mayweather. And but yeah, these exhibitions, they're getting a bit, what's the word? They're going a bit out of date now, aren't they? I think Floyd Mayweather, he got Shakur Stevenson. He's good friends with him. Maybe go and manage his career and everything, because he's running into a very tough fight October 12th. But yeah, it was a quiet weekend in boxing. There was a lot more, I want to say, talking points since the last podcast we did. But yeah, it's just nice that this weekend we get a proper, boxing card where there's proper fights on it.
Yeah, I mean, you've sort of touched on it there with obviously Shakur Stevenson. That Beterbiev Bivol undercard has been announced now on a Riyadh season show, and oh my God, it's a phenomenal card, sort of from top to bottom. That the fighters involved, now that we're seeing that culmination of Top Rank and Golden Boy and Boxer and all these companies now joining in, what we've got is an unbelievable card. So to run through it quickly, and then we'll talk about the card as a whole. You obviously got Beterbiev Bivol for the lightweight, the light heavyweight, belts. You got Shakur Stevenson, Joe Cordina. Cordina's first fight in a new weight class. Chris Eubank making a return, not against the best fighter in the world, but making a return nonetheless. Fabio Wardley, Fraser Clark, which was arguably the fight of the year this year, and no doubt it will just carry on as they left it off. Jaya Pattaya making a return against Jack Massey, who's a very highly rated cruiserweight. Ben Whittaker fighting Liam Cameron. Definitely the toughest test of Ben Whittaker's career. And probably the toughest test of Liam Cameron's career as well. So that'll be an interesting matchup. Sky Nicholson versus Raven Chapman, the first ever female fight on a Riyadh season card and the first female world title in Saudi Arabia. It is a phenomenal card from top to bottom. If such a thing is possible, Harry, which one or two fights is interesting you the most on this card?
Because you know me, I can't stick to one fight. I think, listen, the main event speaks for itself. You know that's going to be quality, so I'm going to put that to one side and we'll look at the undercard. I think Fabio Wardley, Fraser Clark, it's round 13, as you were, boys, you know, and it's great to see that they've actually got on this Riyadh card because I've seen a lot of people online saying they don't like the fact it's over in Saudi Arabia, British title fight over in Saudi Arabia, but their last fight, the amount of mileage they've put on the clock from that fight, they deserve a big payday, and that's what they get over in Saudi Arabia. This sport isn't about how long you can last in; it's about how much money you can make in a short period of time, and then go. Chris Eubank is in a decent fight, but I think the fight we should be talking about is Sky Nicholson and Raven Chapman because it's the first female fight on a Riyadh season card, and it's a proper, you don't know who to back in that fight. You know, Raven Chapman gets her shot. Sky Nicholson looked good in her last performance on the undercard of Boots Ennis over in Philadelphia. But yeah, just top to bottom, it's another great card by Saudi Arabia. And His Excellency
Yeah,
Turki Alalshikh. Get that in.
I couldn't agree more. I think what I take as well with that Fabio Wardley Fraser Clark fight, and I do see the frustrations with it being in Saudi Arabia, and I do feel that to a sense. But also, what you've got to think as well, Shakur Stevenson towards the top of the bill on that on the undercard, top fight at the undercard. Beterbiev, Bivol, these guys are global names, particularly big names over in the States, where Fabio Wardley and Fraser Clark, unless you're a big sort of amateur boxing Olympic fan, you won't have heard of Fraser Clark. And you definitely wouldn't have heard of, Fabio Wardley from white collar background. So what this is going to be able to do is fighters like those two are going to get put on a platform where the American audience is going to come over for Shakur Stevenson, and it is going to be a phenomenal card and a brilliant thing for whoever wins that fight's profile, or if it's a similar fight to how it was last time, both their profiles will skyrocket from that one. And then, yeah, like you said, I think the likes of Jaya Pattaya, Chris Eubank, Ben Whittaker, they're exciting fighters. I'm not sure they're in necessarily quite as exciting fights as the other one. Joe Cordina's got an unbelievably tough challenge against Shakur Stevenson at the weight class, a new weight class up. That's going to be unbelievably difficult. You're fighting one of the best at a new weight class. It's going to be difficult, but it's a weight class he's been wanting to jump up to a while. He's a two-time world champion. There's every chance that he can do it, and I'm sure as the time gets closer, us three will be thinking more and more that Joe can get the job done. But yeah, like you said, just to completely echo that, Sky Nicholson, Raven Chapman it's the perfect fight for this card, and the perfect fight to make history because it's an unbelievable fight. First and foremost, it's two very high level female fighters, and we sometimes see a bit of a skill gap between the very top in women's boxing and the sort of next level. So when a lot of the female fighters do win world titles, I find sometimes it's an easier fight than you'd want. But this is not going to be an easy fight for Sky to defend. And, Raven Chapman will give Sky a fight. And if Raven Chapman wants to win the world title, she's got one of the best in the world to get through. So yeah, every fair play to Turki Alalshikh. I think he said that, women's fighting was going to come to Saudi Arabia. I doubted whether or not it would when they didn't get their hands on, Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor. But it's come. It's finally come, and it is on, I would say, confidently the best card of this year. Probably the best card of the last 2 or 3 years, without a doubt.
So we said this year, though, going about these Saudi Arabian cards, that this is the best fight card we've seen all year. This is definitely up there. And, you talk about Jaya Pattaya there. He's up against Jack Massey. Jack Massey obviously did a massive, he had probably the career best performance against Isaac Chamberlain last time out. And I want to say he's a Yorkshireman. So I think I know where your prediction would be going for that fight. But it's a good opportunity for him. And this card's got a lot of that. Liam Cameron, I thought he held his own against Lyndon Arthur last time out. Didn't get the win, but he pushed Lyndon Arthur. And, he's going to make it hard for Ben Whittaker. Is Ben Whittaker going to be doing all that showboating that he does on a regular basis in the ring? I don't know in that fight. But yeah, it's just good to see a lot of British boxers again getting the limelight, going over to Saudi Arabia, getting a big payday. But Joe Cordina is being a Welsh podcast based. Yeah, you probably have to back him, don't you? You'd be wrong if you didn't back him against Shakur Stevenson. But it's a tough fight. You go up to a new weight category and take on someone who's in a lot of people's top 10 pound for pound fighters at the moment. It's an incredibly tough task. He's recently signed with Matchroom, so what I don't understand is now it's Eddie against Eddie. So who does he favour in that fight? He's already talking about future fights for Shakur Stevenson, but yeah, listen, Joe Cordina's got a massive opportunity, and like in that Kakache fight, Kakache, we weren't talking about him being up there to win the fight. He was going over there just as a sort of Joe Cordina could walk the fight, and like he said in an interview with us, but if there's anything like that fight, Joe Cordina's got a massive opportunity here to cause a huge upset and cement himself further in probably one of the greats that have ever come from this country.
Yeah, fair enough. I can't argue with that. Quickly, before I move on to what I was going to say, Jack Massey's from Derbyshire, not from Yorkshire. And I can confirm if he was from Yorkshire, I still would predict a Jai Opetaia finish because I think the man is a danger to human life.
I've
But
just start. I've just started World War Two there, so World War Three. My bad.
that's all right. It's all good. What I was
All the
going to
same
say
up there
is
for me.
something I saw on Twitter quite a lot, and I don't know whether or not I know what I feel about it, but it was interesting that people are talking about it, is saying that the Saudi Arabian schedule and these kind of cards is ruining the other boxing schedule. And I think this came off the back of a quiet weekend this weekend, which obviously wasn't supposed to be a quiet weekend. It was supposed to be Catchal Prograis, which is a phenomenal fight and a phenomenal card in its own right, which obviously now been delayed. But do you think that's a fair criticism that because we're getting these big fights that maybe fighters are holding off fighting, or is it just giving opportunities for the bottom? And I kind of think I know your answer to this question, but are the big fights happening at the top allowing the smaller fights to grow as well?
I think it's exactly that. I think we've seen a lot lately that there's been a lot of 50-50 fights made in British boxing at the moment. You look back at that Tyler Denny and Felix Cash fight. He didn't play out like a 50-50. Tyler Denny absolutely destroyed him. But it's those sort of fight cards that back before the Riyadh season, they wouldn't be as talked about because we were very excited. I believe there was Connor Walker was on that undercard. Who else was on there that I can think of? The names are gone, but that's one example. And I'm just talking about British boxing here. Over in the States, there's been some incredible cards. Ryan Garcia against Devin Haney. That was, as much as the drama outside the ring was, in the ring was potentially one of the fights of the years. Johnny Fisher against Alan Babich. In what world would you see Johnny Fisher step up against Alan Babich if it wasn't for this Riyadh season sort of thing? Joe Joyce, Derek Chisora. That card was amazing. You had Dennis McCann and Baluta on that, Moses Atoma, Marius Vac. The way that Saudi Arabia is doing boxing at the moment for me, it's telling the promoters of the fighters that if they're not willing to take a risk, you're not going to go far in this sport. So we're seeing a lot more fighters rolling the dice, and I think it's only good for the sport because it makes the fights more entertaining and more watchable.
Yeah, without a doubt, I echo that more, and I think we're looking at it from top to bottom really. When you look at the picture, you obviously got from the Tyson Fury Oleksandr Usyk undisputed heavyweight title fight, the pinnacle of the sport, as good as it gets, is happening. And then you look below that and there's world title fights happening at every division, 50-50 tough fights. And then you look below that and, the Commonwealth, the British, the European, obviously from our perspective, fights are brilliant and are being fought for regularly. And then, you look below that, you've got the likes of, Giorgio Vizioli, some really talented British prospects coming through. And then you look below that again and, what the small hall shows are doing with, GBM Sports, Top Tier now, both on DAZN. You had Nielsen Boxing, I think, and a few others have done sort of 5v5, 10v10 variants, And then you look at what the show we were at the other weekend with Dan and Richie, the first ever female Welsh title fight. And I think all of these, I'm not saying it's a direct cause and effect, because Usyk and Fury fought, we're getting the first female Welsh title. That's a far cry from, a realistic thing to say. But what it is doing is it's creating such a buzz around boxing that people have more of an appetite for it, and so they're consuming more of those slightly smaller fights. And then the people that kind of was like, oh, I watched world title to British level are now watching prospects, and the people who watched world title down to prospects now watching small horse shows. And it's all in this sort of it's like they say with the Premier League and football, that it the money trickles down. And I'm not sure in boxing much money trickles down, unfortunately, but certainly the excitement does, and certainly people's interest does. And I think I could reasonably say, if I speak to someone who I know is sort of into boxing now, that they know about some of the big fights coming up. Whereas 3-4 years ago, unless it was AJ or Fury, people didn't really know or care about what was going on. Which is, it's only good. More and more people care. More and more people are talking about it, and hopefully more and more people are listening to some boxing podcasts or such like.
Fingers crossed. No, but going back to what you said about the small hall shows, I think they've got some of the best fights you'll ever watch on there. We just come off a brilliant history-making fight with Victoria Perkins and Ashley Johnson the other week. I know it's Welsh bias here, but Jake Taitling against Angelo Dragoni was just an absolute war. It's just a shame no one was there filming it, to put out and publish, because that could get small or fight of the year right there. But like Johnny Clark from Top Tier, what he's doing is unbelievable. He's putting on really good cards, and you talk about getting your money's worth. Instead of, going to all these big shows, just go to your local hall. You could go, like, I don't know, up in Barnsley, there was one on Saturday night, the Barnsley Metrodome. You can go to and watch a fight. You can go and watch, I don't know, somewhere in Bristol in like the, what's it called, the galleries in Bristol. They've got some really good fights on there, and you see not just the future, but you see like an English title, defense. You can see a shootout between that, and it's just good to see now that you can maybe put it down to Saudi Arabia, or you could just put it down to the fact that boxing now has come back alive. People are actually talking about it. When was the last time, when you had that Fury Usyk, when was the last time the front page of a newspaper had something about a boxing fight, and also the back page? Probably pre-pandemic, probably when AJ beat Klitschko, or even Fury against Wilder. Boxing at the moment is flying, and we're seeing it with first hand with some of the events we were going to. We went to that Wembley card announcement press conference, and you just saw the amount of media there. Imagine if that was 2019. I doubt there'd be that much media there for an H84 press conference, but because Saudi Arabia are involved, it's just making it all more watchable for me.
Yeah, without a doubt. And on that route of boxing talk, and the more people are talking about boxing, it's a shame we're not going to have Ben's opinion on this, but what I would want to talk about is that pound for pound picture. We haven't really discussed this sort of officially since the undisputed fight, and obviously there was a bit of the sort of excitement post that. But obviously since Inoue last fought, Crawford and Usyk have both picked up huge wins. But Inoue is an unbelievably active fighter. I think he's had 5 fights in the last sort of the 13-14 months or something. So who is for you, or what is for you, your pound for pound top 3? Run it out so I can put it in a YouTube short, and then explain why.
My top pound for pound number 3 is, I don't know. Pound for pound is so hard because there's so many different variables you could go with, but I think for me, Usyk number 1, Crawford number 2, Inoue number 3, just because of what they have done recently. Crawford moving up to fight against Madrimov, Usyk moving up and just going straight through the heavyweight division. And yet Inoue, I'm sure he's going to definitely be starting to slowly but surely push himself even more up that list. And you can easily make an argument for Inoue to be number 1, Crawford to be number 1 even, and you can even make an argument for those two to be above Usyk. But yeah, it's always one of those sort of things where you tell people your opinion on it, and then everyone will say, "Oh no, Terence Crawford's number 1 because of this," and it's great to have because again, it's another talking point that we can have in boxing. But yeah, Oleksandr Usyk for me after absolutely battering Tyson Fury the other month, I think he's pound for pound number 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue it. Like you say, you can't really argue that they're wrong. I can't tell you you're wrong. I have a slightly different opinion. I think the rate at which Inoue fights and the sheer dominance in which he imposes in every single fight, I think stands for something for me. I don't think anyone could give Inoue currently in the weight classes around him the trouble that Fury gave Usyk or that Madrimov gave Crawford. So I think, from that point of view, and I think, to be honest, I think that just comes more to the fact that I just really like Naoya Inoue. I just really, really like him. I think he does it so easily, and yet what he does is so simple. He does the fundamentals of boxing so perfectly. But he is also, it's so complicated. The sheer quality of what he can do and how he does it, even though it's so simple, is so high level, and it's I enjoy watching him because you always feel like something's going to happen. He was dropped, I think, for pretty much the first time by Lewis Neri, and you thought, oh shit, he's hit the ground for the first time. What's he going to do? And he takes his time to get back up, like a seasoned journeyman would, and then he just knocks him down twice and finishes the fight. And it's like, well, you can't really um, argue with that, and maybe. I would like to see a Inoue fight out of Japan, and I don't think that's not something to involve in the pound for pound picture. I don't think where you fight has any difference to how good a fighter you are. But it would be nice to see him fight outside of Japan. Move over, maybe jump up in weight and fight somebody as the B side, so to speak. Not that he would be, but because he is a huge name in Japan. But to give my ultimate answer, I think Inoue, Usyk, Crawford is my top three. I think for the same reason as you, I think Usyk's performance against Fury is phenomenal, and the weight difference is obscene, and the quality he showed to do that has to have some points to it and some pluses to it. Terence Crawford was very impressive against Madrimov. I don't care what people say. Oh, he was rubbish. He nearly got beat. He should have got beat. No, Madrimov is a very, very high level fighter who asked a very, very high level of Crawford, and he provided a very, very high level in order to beat him. Um, but yeah, that's our top threes. And then I suppose what we'll do, just definitely not because I'm keeping an eye on the timer, just because I think it'd be interesting to hear what you have to say. The 4 and 5, that's the one that's kind of more disputed. Who falls just outside that top three pound for pound picture? Which two fighters? And you don't have to give an order because I've put you on the spot there.
Wow. I think the winner of Beterbiev Bivol, could definitely make that number 4, potentially number 3 even. God, another name. Um, People would say Canelo Alvarez is in their top 5 pound for pound for what he's done in boxing, but I can't think of any other names really that I would put in the top 5 pound for pound. Yeah, I would go the winner of Beterbiev Bivol and then Canelo Alvarez is number 5.
Fair enough. And would you say that before the Bivol Beterbiev fight, that the whoever, sorry, that before the Beterbiev Bivol fight, that those whoever you pick out of those two is fifth rather than fourth behind Canelo, or do you think they're better?
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, completely. I think I would have had Bivol 4th and then Beterbiev 6th or 5th, one or the other.
Fair enough.
But
It's
honestly, like you
it's
say though, with Saudi Arabian boxing, we're getting an undisputed. We've had an undisputed heavyweight fight, and now we're having an undisputed uh, light heavyweight fight, and it's incredible. It's a proper 50-50. That card that we just talked about. I'm not being funny. I would have paid 25 quid just for that one fight. And there's so many factors in that fight as well. Beterbiev's age is probably the one that a lot of people are going to go when they make their predictions, look at his age and think, oh, I don't know, and then look at his last performance against Callum Smith and pick out holes. And Bivol being the more active could play into his advantage. But yeah, they're both definitely up there with pound for pound.
I think what's difficult is that Bivol never feels like he kind of wipes the floor with his opponents. Not because he doesn't, because I think he does. I think he is a step above, but because just his style doesn't tend to make people look bad. So I think what you have to do is you have to look at that Canelo fight, and Bivol showed a level in that Canelo fight that very few fighters in the world could show. Very few people in the world could beat Canelo, and Bivol was able to do that. So I think he does probably go into this favourite because there's more question marks around Artur Beterbiev. But equally, I think Beterbiev's ceiling might be a little bit higher. If he turns up on the best of his day, he's pretty unstoppable. His power, his work rate, his engine, the way he links the shots together. So, like you say, it is going to be a phenomenal fight and one that I just can't wait for. But we're going to have to wait for because that's how boxing works. So on to this weekend, the fights that happen in this weekend. What we'll do is we'll talk about Diego Pacheco fighting in California, and then we'll talk about Inoue, and then we'll do the boxing news prediction app as always on the Diego Pacheco fight. So we'll sort of go bounce back to it in a weird way. I don't know why I've decided we're doing it like that, but that is how we are doing it. So that whole Pacheco card, what fights interest you? What fights are you most looking forward to? What's your thoughts on the card?
Well, with Ben not being here, I think I wouldn't be a good mate if I didn't mention his mate, Chev Clark. He's fighting this weekend, and he's actually in a very good fight. I think that's probably the fight of the night right there against Eftabar Apochi. It's not going to be easy for him. He's coming off Apochi's coming off a fifth round knockout win in his last performance. Obviously, Chev Clark made a big step up against Alice Zorro last time out on the undercard of Catrol Taylor, and for me, I was quite critical of his performance. I thought he didn't show a lot, but then I messaged you and I said I was quite disappointed in Chev Clark, and then the next round he gets Zorro out of there, and yeah, it's a good fight. It's good to see as well that a Brit's going over to the States, getting that experience of traveling, going to a different time zone and all that. And, we're starting to see that a lot more. Like local fighters are going to start doing that as well. And it's just to tick over. They're probably used to it with the amateurs. But yeah, it's another good fight. 10 rounds as well. So he's got a lot more time to work with. And yeah, but I'm sure I would be an idiot if I didn't predict a Chev Clark stoppage. So, but it's a good test for him. That Diego Pacheco fight as well is a very good fight. Obviously, coming off his first ever 10-rounder, last time out against Sean McCalman. And he's fighting a Polish guy who is very durable. I don't know about what you say about him, Sam, but he's very, very good. And it's a very tough test for him. But the thing I was quite shocked about with this event as a whole is how late the undercard has come together. Last night, Eduardo Nunes and Miguel Mariaga is another great fight, was just announced 6 days out from the card, 7 days out. I didn't quite understand that, but it's definitely a fight card where there's 3 fights on there. There's a world title fight, I believe, with Adelaida Ruiz, or the interim, and Jeannie Fuchs, which is another great fight. But yeah, the one I'm looking out for is Chev Clark because 1, he's British, and 2, he shouted out Ben and started having a go at him, which I found very funny.
Yeah, I think Chev Clark gets our absolute shout out because, like we said, we met him at that Wembley card, and I think we've said this a couple of times on the podcast now. But he was just a lovely guy. So I hope him and I wish him all the way to the top. And he comes through in a difficult British cruiserweight division. It's no easy division. You look Jack Massey, Isaac Chamberlain, Vidal Riley. There's a lot of talented fighters coming through there. So it'll be interesting to see. I think what they're trying to do generally is sort of try and put those guys in different directions, so that they can kind of avoid each other until a world title fight or something worth fighting for is there. And so that's what I think. What Eddie's doing here with Chev is getting him over to the States and sort of building him in a different way to without. I know he doesn't manage or promote um, some of those other fighters, but you don't want them to hit each other too early and possibly derail one another. But Diego Pacheco is a phenomenal fighter. He's a really exciting fighter, and he's always in a good fight. And I think last time he fought, we called it a guarantee knockout, and I don't think he got one. So I think we need to stop using that phrase. So I'm not going to use that phrase today. But like you say, he's again in a really tough fight against a guy. No one gets 32 wins accidentally. That's not something you can do. You have to beat some half reasonable fighters to get there. And that's what he's done. So that'll be an interesting clash. Like you say, and that female super flyweight, WBC interim, sorry, is going to be an interesting fight. 16-0 as a female is a very, very strong record, and her opponent's only 3-0. But we know you get those opportunities a little bit earlier in the women's division. So 10 2-minute rounds at super flyweight to me just sounds like non-stop action. That is going to be a really, really exciting fight. And we'll bounce back to that for the predictions. But over to Japan next Tuesday, which is going to make it really difficult for you and Ben to record an episode next week. But that's not my problem. I'm on holiday, so we'll preview that one now. Take versus Daigo Higa for the WBO World Bantamweight, 9-0 versus 21-2-1. It's these Japanese cards, I always find, you might not know the names, but afterwards you tend to go, oh wow, yeah, he's got something about them, and I think that's probably something we're going to say after this one as well.
Yeah, these Japanese cards, you look at when you search up fights of the year so far, a lot of them have come out of Japan, and yeah, that Take fight, his last fight against Jason Maloney was very, very good, unanimous decision win. Again on that undercard of a Inoue Neri, and he's in a tough fight. Daigo Higa, 21-2. I mean, It's not very. It's a good fight, but yeah, if we're making our predictions, I think Take probably by decision. But we talk about these Saudi Arabian cards giving you value for money. We've got 4 12 rounders and 1 10 rounder, which on a normal fight card over in the UK, we would be complaining, there's too many 12 rounders, blah, blah, blah. Over in Japan, it seems to be the norm that none of their fights on their cards on a big show, there's no 8 rounders, there's no 6 rounders. If you want to be on the big shows, you have to fight 10 rounders. And, for some boxing fans, that's what they like watching because you get to see more of them, how they box and everything. But yeah, it's a decent card, Tuesday morning. I'm sure that me and Ben will find a way of filming a podcast. We definitely will not be ringing you up whilst you are in the sun in the south of France and complaining to you that we don't know what we're doing. But yeah, it's another great card. And one thing I'm starting to get used to is also watching these fight cards on a Tuesday morning. Like, there's no better way of watching probably a pound for pound great in a Inoue on a Tuesday morning with your cornflakes, and yeah, I certainly will be doing that whilst you probably lie on a sun lounger. And I'm definitely not sounding like I'm jealous here, staying here. But yeah, it's a great card, and there's a lot of, and Inoue's in a very good fight. Last time out, like you said earlier, he was dropped for the first time. TJ Doheny is no mug. His last performance was obviously out in, I believe it was in Japan, yeah, in the Tokyo Dome. And it was an 8 rounder. Look at me. I said that if you want to fight on the big shows in Japan, you have to fight 10 rounders. He's obviously, that wasn't probably a big show. But yeah, it's a decent fight for Inoue. It's a very good challenge. But like you say, there's no one around those weight categories that can touch him. So yeah, I think Inoue goes 28-0 quite easily and potentially gets another stoppage.
Yeah, I think the only real question for me at the moment is when does Inoue move up to featherweight, because his quality and his level at super bantamweight is untouchable. And I think you could question this as a fight because obviously TJ Doheny's he's not one of the best in the division. Of course he's not, but he's in that picture, and He's been in there with some really tough operators, Michael Conlan, Sam Goodman. He's been in there with some good fighters. And I think, Inoue, with him being as active as he is, you can't expect him to fight, a pound for pound great every week. That's just not, it's not like realistic. You have to fight, who's available if you're going to be that active. And I think a jump up to featherweight for Inoue would be a difficult a thing to do, because obviously he is quite a small fighter, and the more weight classes you jump up, the more difficult it's going to become. But when your ability is as good as he is, I think we'll probably see him adjust to that jump whenever he does do it. Pretty comfortably. Onto the predictions, onto the boxing news app, Harry's favourite part of the week. So maybe it'll be a good part this week because there's no Ben to ruin the fun for both of us. It's a guaranteed win for one of us too, a guaranteed upset. So let's see what they've got for us once my Wi-Fi decides to play ball. So we've got the first one on there: Alexander Guechi versus David Vargas Zamora, 6-rounder, super flyweight. I'm gonna go for Getche is an interesting fighter. Actually, I was having a look at him. He's only 18 with a record of 5-0, 5 knockouts, which is it's certainly an impressive start to your career. And I think he's gonna carry on as he started and go for that another knockout.
Yeah, Vargas Zamora lost his last fight by knockout, so yeah, Gaethje by knockout.
And then the next one, Fabian Rojo versus Alejandro Frias Rodriguez, welterweight 6-rounder. This is another young fighter with a strong knockout record. He's had 9 fights, only 24 rounds between those fights. So that averages at 2.5 rounds a fight. Obviously, I know you start with 4-rounders and whatnot, but he's certainly not going the distance all that often. Against a difficult Mexican in Alejandro Frias Rodriguez. I think this one I'm going to go for a Rojo decision. I think he could get the finish, and I think that's probably the most likely. But it does get to a point where you come up against an opponent that's going to be too tough, and I think that might be this one.
Well, I'm going the complete opposite. So we are actually going to have a winner. I think Rojo gets a knockout win, but I'm only basing it off his last fight. Rodriguez got stopped again, and Rojo in his last fight stopped his opponent. So I'm just going off that. But there's this fight coming up here could be one that could split opinion, because I'm going to go first just in case people say we're copying each other with our predictions. But I think Bazaldua gets a points decision win over Kyle Irwin.
Yeah, same. I know what you mean. It's one that there's more of a challenge in this one. But with that height difference, I think he's super lightweight. I think he's like 6'2". Basil Dewey. I seem to. He's a huge fighter at that weight category, and I think unless you're a really top operator, that's a really tough challenge to get through. So I think that is that's going to happen. Basil Dewey points decision, and then the one we spoke about, the WBC silver or the WBC interim, I suppose it is. Adelaida Ruiz versus Ginny Fuchs. Got to be careful with that one, so YouTube doesn't get us in trouble. Interesting one, tough one to call. I'm gonna go for the number one in the division, Ruiz, for a points decision. I think I'd be silly to bet against her, but Ginny Fuchs is a tough fighter, I'm sure.
Yeah, Sam, you need to watch your language, mate. You're meant to be a commentator, remember? Yeah, I agree. I think Ruiz gets a points decision win.
Oh, I can't wait for a text in a couple of days. Why are you talking about me in the podcast? Never mind. Diego Pacheco versus Maciej Sulecki, the main event. Obviously, we spoke about this. It's a knockout specialist versus a durable pole. It's going to be a tough challenge, and Pacheco he's a big guy, he's a tall guy, he's a strong guy. Is he going to get the finish in this one? Over 12 rounds, I'm going to say yes.
Okay, wow. I think we might be going different here. Demetrius Andre beat him over 12 rounds by the judge's scorecard. Michael Conlan couldn't stop him. I know Baluta couldn't stop him, so I believe Pacheco, I don't know, Pacheco points just to go different. So you could win by quite a big margin this weekend. Pacheco
Or so could
10,
you.
so
Or so could you.
12.
So we're both just working out
Some
the
predictions.
rounds on this one.
The rounds. But the rounds are so important. That's how I lost the other week. I lost by 1 round. If I went down one more round, I would have won. So I was a
So
bit
right, wait
annoyed.
on the
But
count of three, we'll say how many rounds we've gone for because I haven't I haven't. So 3, 2, 1, 32.
38.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
Oh, we should be fine
38,
then. We should be
32.
fine.
Yeah.
There's going to be a winner. There's going to be a winner. We're locked in.
Well, there's definitely going to be a
Be
winner.
interesting. And I think
That's what
in regards
everyone
to
tunes
boxing.
in for these predictions, don't they?
Oh yeah, this is everyone stays to this point of the video. I've looked on the YouTube analytics. Absolutely nobody clicks off before 41 minutes. We have exceptional viewer retention. Um, that being said, if you are still listening, drop a comment down below, and I don't know, we'll thank you or something. So this is proof if you are still listening and you care about the predictions, which is again, like we said, absolutely no one. Maybe my dad, maybe my mate Callum, who knows, but if you are listening, let us know. Otherwise, we'll catch you all in the next episode, or I won't catch you. I'll be catching some rays, as Harry said. But Ben and Harry will catch you in the next episode where they'll be talking, I'm sure, Naoya, Inoue, and all that other good stuff. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Punches chance. Punches Chance Podcast.